This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. I'm thrilled to welcome back to the show an all-time legend in the fantasy sports industry from Football Guys. It's the one and only Sigmund Bloom. How are you, Sig?
I'm doing great. Every day that we get to experience this, the football calendar together, however it ends up, we got to do it together. And there's just some great people in our fantasy football world to spend that time with.
Yeah, and there's some great people in this stacked league that we're going to be talking about today as well. But you're right. I mean, this community is great, and this game is certainly a privilege and a joy. Obviously, I love the fantasy league experience and everything this league or this game has brought to my life, and I'm sure has blessed you as well. But it's suddenly week 14. How in the world did that happen?
Well, that's the whole thing, right? The way you experience time during a football season, especially if you are playing fantasy football. And I just recorded this week's On the Couch with Mike Dempsey. And it was great because I was able to get fired up about this idea that putting the fantasy back in fantasy football, where the whole point is like you're a GM, you're leading a football team. And just like the football teams, you have to simultaneously look back, learn from last week, self-assess, and look forward and make predictions and make your game plan. And you're constantly in this dual backward and forward looking consciousness that, like you say, the next thing you know, it's almost Christmas.
It's crazy, and it's a beautiful game, and you gotta love the journey. I think it's why so many people fall in love with this great game. It's because of that ride that the whole season has to bring, and like you said, it's gone so fast, and it's because you're having a good time doing it. So for you, what's new at Football Guys? What's happening at Football Guys?
Yeah, and I thought about this question. And I almost want to say what's old at Football Guys. And what I mean is what hasn't changed at Football Guys. I just say that because we're in the middle of the calendar. And in the season, we're just going to be consistent and giving you all the support we're going to give you to bring home the title. And then, of course, once we get to, we're going to playoff fantasy football projections and things like that. But that's part of, I think, what's the same about Football Guys, what's old at Football Guys is we are all on that journey with the players because that's all we are. I mean, that was the original genesis of Football Guys, was all of us came from the message board. We were all just of the community already, if we're going back like 20 or 25 years. And we analyze the game and we cover it with that spirit. And there might be ways for companies to get bigger or make more money, but this is the way we love doing it.
I think it's very, very well said. I love it. Let's dive into some stacked. I think it's a fun aspect of what's going on in the fantasy space right now. We have a charity league where a ton of industry leaders are competing for again a lot of charity money, and it's been fun to witness from my perspective. You right in the thick of it. I'm sure it's been a ton of fun, especially where you're at in the standing. It's gotta be a good place to be. But what was it that made you want to compete in this league?
Well, first of all, the Reddit fantasy football community has done so much for us. It is the Uber community of fantasy football now. And having that kind of space and having a marketplace of information and ways of engaging with this game, I think has just been so valuable to just help more people find their homes in our little fantasy football clubhouses and otherwise, it's a circulatory system of what we're doing here. And so when Jeremy approached me, of course, I was going to say yes to whatever he said. And then there's just a chance to compete for charity, which has been nerve-wracking because, I've been doing this long enough that people ask me, like, how's this fantasy football, how your team's doing? It's like, fantasy football's been so good to me. No matter how, and I have so many teams, it's like, even if I'm trying to filter it down to my predictions week to week and not look at my teams, like there's always stuff that breaks for you and against you. And in the end, you're just like, well, I had a great time watching football and looking at how my teams were doing. But when you're playing for somebody else, Kevin, oh man, it's too much. It's too much pressure.
I love it though. What is the charity that you're battling for?
Toop's Family Meal here, and there's there's so many great restaurants in New Orleans. I love New Orleans. If stop me from talking about New Orleans after this question, or else I'm going to talk about it for the whole time we're here. But
I love it.
but if anybody's come to New Orleans, I mean, there are great restaurants that everybody knows about in New Orleans. There are the restaurants that are famous, the chefs that are famous, stuff like down in the French Quarter. But there's also some of the most amazing restaurants outside of that. And Toop's Meadery is it's like a Cajun butcher, like just like Cochon Butcher and Cochon for folks that know that restaurant, but it's very homey. And the couple that runs it, there's so many restaurants like this in New Orleans, Kevin, where it's like just a couple. It's like almost like they're having you over to their house for dinner. And during the pandemic, they started to try to get meals to people that were vulnerable, like their food security is vulnerable. And it was one of those things that because they were meeting the need and the need was so large, it just kept growing and growing. And it just feels to me like one of the purest things you can do where, there's kind of a spiritual math that we're all part of, whether you realize it or not. And doing something for others fills you up with more than anything you could do for yourself.
I love it. It sounds like a wonderful cause that they're doing down there. Now, I can see where you're saying the pressure's on because this season, like I said, you and me watching it from the outside, it's been so cool. Obviously, Dave Richard has from the beginning been in first, but you have been there right with him. Step for step. It's week 13 is in the books. You guys are both 10-3, tied at the top. Amazing run, amazing season for both of you. Again, given the competition here, so we got Dave Richard at in the first seed right now. You're what you're basically 90 points behind him. So you need a win and you need a loss from Dave to take that number one seed. But either way, I mean, we're looking at a first round bye. It's everything you want. Enter in the playoffs. Chris Harris, Kendall Valenzuela, right there at 8-5. They're pretty much locked in their spots. They've been I'm sure tough competition all season. I know they've been right there. It's really been the four of you in the top the whole time. And then there's this cluster. I mean, right now we got Ben Gretsch, we got Andy Behrens, we got Jake Seeley, we got Andrew Cooper, all at 6-7. 4 teams fighting for 2 spots. None of them are playing each other in week 14, which is pretty wild. And so all 4 of those need a win and they need some help. So it's pretty cool to see that. Justin Boone at 5-8 is kind of just stuck there. Unfortunately, his points aren't going to allow him to get into a tie and break a tie. But David Kitchens at 5-8, he's there as well. He has a chance to get actually last place. Now, last place in this league, there's a potential punishment. You got 3 choices. There's got to wear a jersey of a rival team for a week. You got to run a videoed 40-yard dash, and you have to do a public speech, on social media that's written by the champion. So fun ideas. I kind of love everything they're doing with that. Nothing that you have to worry about. But I promise you, John Daigle, Greg Branos, and David Kitchen are all very consumed with this, trying to get out of the cellar. It's been fun to even watch the other side of the spectrum. If you haven't paid attention from up top, it's been a fun ride all the way through. But talk to me about this run. Getting that 10-3. What's it been like competing with these folks?
Well, it's been nerve-wracking basically from my first matchup with Dave and his juggernaut, when I actually was ahead of him in week 1. We played in week 1, and which kind of seems like an omen now. And I was actually ahead of him with a few minutes left in the Monday night game, and then Derrick Henry fumbled. And Kevin, I've been playing fantasy football long enough that like certain times, like something will happen, and it's during the season, like you'll lose a matchup by like 0.25. Did I just miss the playoffs? Like, did I just miss is that? I'm gonna look back and be like, that's how I. So, I mean, in this case, it might just be the difference between the 1 and 2 seed, which could be consequential depending on who we draw in the next round. But I think that what the key for me was, I'm aggressive trading. I mean, it's your GM, have fun, throw some trades out, and Jonathan Taylor in the Colts offense, I was a believer. I got, as soon as Joe Burrow went down, I did not want Chase Brown. I lost George Kittle and I had Tucker Kraft. I always felt like Tucker Kraft was going to emerge as an elite fantasy tight end this year, so I was willing to trade Kittle. I think there was like a minor swap. I threw in Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt before he had his big game, but there was a lot of speculative value there. But I went after my white whale, but I got him, and that was a massive part of it. And Tucker Kraft was big for a while. I made a few other trades. I traded DK Metcalf for Kelsey with Dave, so that's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
As a Steelers fan, I want to say I hope he keeps playing DK Metcalf against me if he's playing the playoffs. I traded Deebo Samuel for Kenneth Walker. We'll see if that works out. I feel like one of the hacks in this league has been that we're so used to PPR that when we play in a 0.5 PPR league, we overestimate the value of wide receivers, and we don't always adjust for the willingness. Like Jameson Williams has been important for my team because you can absorb zeros and twos and fours at wide receiver when you have the promise of a 20 or a 25, which only big play players really give you. You don't get those with just PPR type volume plays. So that's also been important for my team, being really active on the waiver wire, which is fun because it starts on Tuesday morning. Early bird gets the worm, and it goes every single day, which I think is really fascinating because it gives you the chance to adjust. Like if you make a waiver, and it isn't based necessarily on first come, first serve, because each day it resets where you put in bids. It isn't first come, first serve. So you have a chance to revise and course correct and say, well, I picked up this tight end to be my bye week tight end, but now that I've seen the injury report, now that I know this, and maybe I want to make a switch, you could do it.
Yeah, it's been wild. You bring up all those trades and again the waiver wire. I've seen a lot of industry leagues, and I'm sure you've seen 1,000 more than I have over the years. The activity in this league has been very impressive. I mean, the waiver wire is hot every single week. There's been so many trades. It shows how much it's meaning to people, right? They recognize this league's a little different. What's it been like? From your perspective, competing in this league on that note, when it comes to just kind of reviving some excitement for just a simple old fantasy league.
Yeah, it's great for me because it just gives me more to chew on. I mean, I'm actually watching the outcomes of the other matchups, knowing the standings, like you said, frontward and backwards, and knowing the implications of each outcome, and even looking at different choices that people make. And that aren't even in my matchup, Kevin. I'm like, I don't know if I would have done that. Let's see how that turns out. So, it is. I know you do that home league show, and I think that it does embody that home league where we play a lot of fantasy football. We like to put our beliefs into action in a lot of different ways. But hopefully, there's one league, like I said, that you actually care about, that actually kind of nags at you when you lose. That classic thing of being a fan, like Monday morning. What did your team do? How do you feel?
Yeah.
Have a fantasy team that's like that too.
Well, the fact that you're still thinking about that week 1 matchup with Dave Richard, that fuels the playoff run coming. I'm excited to see how that plays out. And you mentioned the waiver wire, obviously, this, beyond stacked, obviously a lot of people are out there trying to get into the playoffs, trying to position themselves in the playoffs. Who out there on the waiver wire is intriguing you in fantasy?
I think there's a couple of look, tight end is always deep on the waiver wire. I think Isaiah Likely becomes an interesting guy that probably is out there, but depending on your league, there might be some others. Quarterback, again, it varies league to league, but certainly if Trevor Lawrence is a player that people haven't been trusting, he's trending up now. Running back, you should always be looking to cycle out your running backs to make upgrades when you have always one or two backup running backs, lottery tickets. Malik Davis is getting into that conversation, as is Ray Davis. But the real action on the waiver wire this week is at wide receiver. And there's a couple of options that I think could potentially be players you look back on. I'm going to get comfortable here. One of the things I'd like doing, Kevin, when you do win a fantasy football championship, if you're fortunate enough to do it, I chose that word carefully, as I look at each player on my roster and I go back to how did I get this guy? What thought process even led me to this player? Sometimes it's players you trade for, sometimes it's players you draft. Every now and then there's a player you pick up like in week 13 or 14 and you just leave them in your lineup because they're that hot shooter, that hot hand. And I think there are two wide receivers could be those guys this year that are almost certainly on the waiver wire in most every league. Adonai Mitchell's one, And in a 0.5 P, I bid $21 on him. I was so happy to get him. 17 was the next highest bid. In a 0.5 PPR league, you love it. But also, like we knew Adonai Mitchell was very talented. He was just in the doghouse. And he ended up in an organization where they're letting him be the number one receiver now. And he's showing so much skill and talent. And Tyrod Taylor is winging it out there to him on the deep ball. And that chemistry was good. And the Jets are in a situation where they are still playing hard. They're not tanking. They're still playing hard for Aaron Glenn. And then there's Devon Vele. And Vele is more of a PPR special with his long possession receiver frame. And Tyler Shuck's going to throw 35 or 40 times a game from here on out. Chris Olave has some back spasms. Vele's touchdown was outstanding last week. His team is still competitive. Also, they're not tanking. And Vele could be a guy that gives you, 15 to 20 points a week in PPR leagues from here on out because the Saints actually have a pretty easy schedule.
Yeah, I mean, these are the guys. I mean, people say, some people don't like the phrase like league winner, but there are those guys that you acquire late in the season that help you through that playoff run. And to me, I mean, that's a league winner. It's fun to see. It's fun to see. There's always that breakout, and it's fun to look back, in the past, and like, oh, I remember that year when this guy showed up and he won me a championship. So make sure you're out there acquiring these players, great assets, potentially down the stretch. Now, it's funny, again, bringing up trades and waivers and how much it can change a roster. But looking back to your draft day roster, was this construction kind of typical for you, or was this because it was a half PPR? You led with running back, tight end, and then you stocked up on some receivers. But basically, Derrick Henry, Chase Brown to start the draft. Then you went with George Kittle. And then you just, you loaded up on in the next 4 or 5 rounds, Mike Evans, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, and Deebo Samuel with Baker Mayfield, in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Was that kind of normal for you? Is that kind of how you approach the season? Or was that, again, because of some of the settings here?
Yeah, I think that in 0.5 PPR, you got to go running back. I mean, I just can't justify. And I think that this is where I'm going to be kind of like, I try not to be that guy, but I would imagine that the folks who didn't are probably looking back and saying that, well, I should have, just because of the magnified value of running backs in a 0.5 PPR league and the added variance of 0.5 PPR. And this is why we ended up with that scaled like 0.5. I've had leagues where it was 0.5 for wide receivers and 1 for running backs and 1.5 for tight ends and things like that, just because of that nature of inflating the wide receiver's value. And then the tight end with Kittle in the 3rd round, in a 0.5 PPR, he was pretty much indistinguishable from McBride and Bowers, even though we think of McBride and Bowers ahead because, again, of PPR volume. And then in 0.5 PPR, the wide receivers are much more tightly packed. I wanted to get a lot of good options, but I didn't feel like I needed to get elite options. So it was definitely a build tailored to that scoring system. And honestly, if people ask fantasy football advice, the first thing, and this is something we've hammered at Football Guys for years, Kevin, know your scoring and lineups. I'm looking into the camera. I say this, I'm serious, Kevin. The biggest edge, unexploited edge, is not some analytic, it's not some tool, it's not some special piece of information that everything is like a skeleton key or Rosetta Stone or something like that. It is just understanding how the scoring and lineups and league size, that's the other dimension, affect the value of players and your strategy. If you tackle that problem and give it a good go and alter your strategy and your decisions on the fly, lineups, trades, waiver wire moves, and in the draft, of course, that is the edge to exploit.
That's the key. Well, you've done a lot. I mean, you've done a lot this season to shape the roster that you want. I mean, the roster you have right now, it's no surprise you're in the top spot or in the first, in tied for first. You got Dak and Matthew Stafford at quarterback. Obviously, quarterbacks that are doing a ton of great work this season. Obviously, you got Jonathan Taylor now in the mix. You targeted him during the season, and obviously that paid off massively. So Taylor, Henry, Kenneth Walker as running backs. You got Jameson Williams obviously heating up, down the stretch here. Chris Godwin's in the mix there. Pat Bryant's in the mix. You got Travis Kelce. I mean, this team is is very talented, poised for a run. Who on this roster do you think is going to, are you most excited to have, and you think is going to finish strong? And who are you a little nervous about?
I think that what I'm hoping for is some of my 0.5 PPR special wide receivers. Jameson Williams is one, and the Amon-Ra St. Brown injury. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it helps. I'm saying it's unfortunate because he's on Dave's team. It's actually very fortunate. But Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to be back. I'm not going to put that on that evil, because now I'm watching one of my guys go down, right? And then I have Alec Pierce, who I left on the bench last week because it was the Houston matchup. But Alec Pierce was amazing last week, and I think that's going to inspire trust from Daniel Jones, throwing the ball to him downfield. And again, these kind of deep ball guys, they can be bread and butter of a 0.5 PPR winner. And then we said, I just picked up Adonai Mitchell. So I hope that if I can get those three guys going, I can really not be hurt at all by not taking any wide receivers in the first 3 rounds, even trading away Deebo Samuel, losing Mike Evans. I traded away Chris Olave in that Taylor trade, but I got DK Metcalf back, and then I sent DK to Dave for Travis Kelce. After Tucker Kraft went down, I'm down to my third tight end of the season. And if I'm worried about anybody, I guess it is Derrick Henry, just because Lamar Jackson is going to be facing Cincinnati, New England, and Green Bay. Yeah. And if they fall behind, if they play like they did, there was a stretch on Thanksgiving where it looked like they were going to hang. They got a couple calls. The call didn't go their way. Isaiah likely fumbled, and the game just got away from them, and they had to go away from Derrick Henry. And he still had a solid game because he had a 44-yard catch and he had a touchdown. But if he's going to give me that 1-2 punch, Lamar Jackson has to be playing better, and those are some tough matchups.
Well, they are for sure. Now, obviously, Week 14 is here. You kind of have a bye. It's one of those things. I love this part of the season where it's like you got your bye locked up in your fantasy season. You want your players to rest. Unfortunately, they do have to play, but you want them to rest because you want them to be there ready for you in the playoffs. But you got Greg Branos this weekend, desperate. He's gonna be fighting, battling, trying to get out of that last place spot. Like I said, all these, you got these 6 and 7 teams that are right in the mix. None of them are playing each other, so they're going to need help from people. In your case, again, you're kind of locked in there. But looking ahead to the playoffs, obviously we've mentioned Dave Richard, got a great squad. Is he the team that you have your eyes set on? Is he the Mike Clay of this league for you? I know once upon a time we talked about it, and Mike Clay was your nemesis, right? Who's the Mike Clay for this league for you? Who's the one person you got to take down?
Yeah, I made a terrible trade with Mike Clay and I should never take any trade that he offers me. Or I offer him. If I want to offer him a trade, I need to stop next time. It is Dave. Because Dave has been that clear top team. And I losing to him the way I did in week 1, Kevin, that's like bulletin board material, right? Like we're going to avenge that loss. We're going to avenge that loss. We're going to do it for charity, right? For Two's family meal, and do it for just the ride of really feeling emotionally invested and a little like emotionally vulnerable in a way that relates us back to all the people that we serve, and why people really love being part of this and are even willing to pay us sometimes for our advice, which is just kind of ridiculous, but hey, I'm here for it. So yeah, it is Dave, but I was going to take a look. I want to say that Kendall's team is also really deep. Looking over a lot of the teams, you would say like Dave's team, for instance, he doesn't have a lot of depth, and the waiver wire is still churning, so it doesn't, it's never say never. But I guess I wanted to make sure to call out her team because I remember that she would always have players on her bench that could have been starting for other teams. And she doesn't have Drake London or T. Higgins right now, and Chuba Hubbard is coming on, and those players, if everybody starts to come on, as Kevin, it has not. And I hate to do this because it becomes like a reverse Bloom. Like my name is like when the oncoming train. I think it's a light at the end of the tunnel. and I'll say this good thing is going to happen. I just had Mike Dempsey on, and when we were talking about superstition in fantasy football, and how you don't set your lineup until your matchup's over. Don't set your lineup for the next week until the matchup's over, right? Superstition. And certainly, I don't want to say this, but the team that's the best team all year almost never wins the fantasy championship. I'd be better off saying that if I was the best team all year instead of it being Dave Richard, because I just ensured he's going to beat me in the championship, or somebody else, because I'm going to get upset in the first round. So yeah, can you tell that I care? I care about beating Dave.
That's true. It is true. It's funny. I always thought, it's not fair. The best team should win it. But, truly the team that positions themselves for that playoff run, I mean, that's what it's all about. And that's what it's about in real life, in real football, as well as fantasy football. But obviously, I'm excited to see how this finished. Can't wait to see how you finish in this run. Definitely rooting for you, pulling for you all the way. Can you share with the listeners and viewers where they can find what you're doing out there in the fantasy space?
Yeah, football guys. I'm always doing projections, like 5 or 6 articles a week, sleepers. I break players up into tiers, do everything I can to give you my insight and lots of other things to help you set your lineups. But then, of course, Cecil and I are recording our previews and recaps, waiver wire show I do on the couch every week with another great personality from the fantasy football world. And it's football guys. That's easy. Right. You want to find what I'm doing. And I'm hanging out on Twitter, shooting from the hip with those hot fantasy football takes. No, it is just so much fun. And as I said before the show, I want to thank you, Kevin, for your continued beacon of positivity presence. And, I think that overall, compared to other corners of the internet, or other corners of like humanity, seemingly, fantasy football space is pretty positive. We're uplifting. We want to help each other. We enjoy each other's company. We're very welcoming. It's a club that the admission is just wanting to be in it. Do you want to be in it? No, welcome. You're in the club now, and you can feel like you belong. And that's something that I've always gotten out of it. And it's because of people like you, positivity, that makes it easy for a lot of people to feel like they belong.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Zig. Huge inspiration to me, and I appreciate everything you've done over the years in the fantasy world. And again, best of luck in this league. Let's take it home for football guys.
Oh, now y'all have to think about that.
No pressure.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time. Be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.